Welcome to the Ebb and Glow podcast. I'm your host, Jenelle Tremblett, and I'm a firm believer that even when life doesn't go as planned, it is taking you exactly where you're meant to be. On this podcast, I'm here to help you finally release control of what you think you want and begin to just trust in the ebbs and flows of life. Each week, I will show you how to build that positive mindset, radiate with self-confidence, and cultivate an unshakable resilience. Let me prove to you that even when life ebbs, you will glow. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 106 of the Ebb and Glow podcast. If you've been a long-time listener of this podcast, I'm sure you're starting to realize I tend to lose my voice a lot, or it gets hoarse every now and then. And that is not good for someone who runs a podcast. Those two things do not line up, and those two things do not add up at all. I find myself, this has nothing to do with this upcoming episode, but just want to say this. I find myself so peer pressured into social plans sometimes because I am an extroverted person through and through, even though I grew up as an only child and have introverted tendencies. But when there's something going on, I cannot for the life of me say no. And this past week, right before this episode is going live, I managed to go out Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night. And I almost went out Sunday as well, but I could not do it. And I worked every single day, all day of all of those days as well. And the nature of my job of talking a lot and obviously being a podcaster and then, obviously being out with my friends, I wake up on a Monday morning with my voice like this. Yeah, so that's what happens. Anyways, that's nothing to do with this episode, but I realized that as I was hitting record to do this audio clip, I was like, oh, right, my voice is hoarse again. Anyways, I hope it has like some level of sexiness to it. Maybe it'll work in my favor. Anyways, I'm super happy to have you for today's episode. Definitely might be in my top 5. Maybe just because a lot of the topics I relate it with a lot. So it might just be a selfish top 5, but I know you are going to love it. But first of all, I want to tell you who our guest is today. So Amanda Blau is a soul alignment coach. She helps men and women who feel like something is missing in their life embrace what truly is calling to them and then create the life of their dreams. So through a combination of coaching psychology, Reiki energy work, somatic breath work, and psychic readings, Amanda brings forward messages and guidance from the client's higher self and spirit team. Amanda helps each person align with their soul's purpose so they can start living from a place of deep connection and inspiration. The interesting thing about our guest today is, sure, Amanda is a soul alignment coach now, helping people achieve everything they want, but it wasn't always that way, of course. So for Amanda, in her late teens and early 20s, she was met with a lot of difficulty and struggle and uncertainty that she has since learned from. So the topics that we go through are low self-worth, self-doubt, not feeling fulfilled, kind of living a life someone else told you to, feeling disconnected from yourself. And overall, Amanda paints a picture that she says it really was deep-rooted in not feeling worthy of love overall. She found herself trying to control aspects of her life through exercising and strict diets and just getting caught up in that fitness and nutrition world. But eventually she realized no, this is not for me. And I have to start going deeper to see where that lack of self-worth is really coming from. We also talk about topics along the lines of going through the check boxes of life and living a traditional life and kind of waking up one day and realizing, nope, this is not what I want, and kind of what to do when you get to that point and how to go back and find yourself and find out what you really were meant to do on this earth. And eventually we chat about some of Amanda's glows where going through all the things that she went through, she has learned to lead with vulnerability and learn to slow down and reflect and really just sit and say, what do I want in this moment? Not kind of going the path of everyone else. She started learning how to make decisions that felt aligned to her. She then started her own business, of course, being a soul alignment coach, and overall just started learning how to heal energy and trusting her own intuition. If you've ever had doubts or any self-worth issues, or even just feeling like a little lost, then this is definitely the episode for you. If you do love the episode, make sure to share it with a friend. that will also gain value from it as well, because it's always nice to give people the resources and stories to show them, hey, you're not alone in what you're going through today. So with that being said, let's jump into the episode. Wherever you are today, have an amazing day, and I'm so thankful that you are here. Okay, enjoy. Amanda, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Like I said right before we hit record, none of the topics today are relatable at all for me. Nothing about self-worth. I have no issues about self-worth at all. None.
Something that we all deal with, but a lot of the time it's very subconscious and it drives all of our actions without us really realizing it. And once I started to understand how it was showing up for me in my life, I decided to start talking about it because I know it's very relatable. And as soon as I start explaining how it's been, affecting my life, I think it's going to resonate with a lot of people.
I know. And before we jump into it, because once I jump into it, we're going to be on the train with no stopping. I always like to ask my guest kind of what's going on this week. Have you had any what I call ebbs happening in the past week or month? Because I like to remind people like, yeah, you can have big things happen in your life, but weekly, we always have kind of failures and ups and downs as well. So kind of what's not working in the past couple of weeks?
So I just got back from a great vacation last week.
Where?
And anytime you get home from vacation, it's always like this period of time where you're like mentally you're still away, but physically you're back and you kind of have to pull yourself back to reality and get back into the swing of things. And I jumped right back into a couple workshops, which I'm trying to do more in-person workshops and guided coaching experiences. And it's very new for me. And it's something that I had to work through a lot of my own fear and self-doubt in order to be able to do those types of things. So gearing up to run a group coaching program has been nerve-wracking for me. And so I've had to work through a lot of the residual fear and self-doubt that came along with that decision.
It just goes to show if you teach people about self-worth and self-doubt, it doesn't mean you're instantly cured from it for the rest of your life.
No. And I don't think the goal should be curing it, or I think that that's a big misconception, is that when you're an emotion that you don't particularly like to feel, like fear, like self-doubt, that it needs to go away because it's part of our human experience and it's never going to go away. So understanding how to work with it and how to breathe through it so that it doesn't affect you in the same way anymore and you can start to change your relationship with it is, I think, where the focus should be, rather than shutting it down and trying to get rid of it.
And I find if I've ever been, say, part of a coaching program or just like group anything, and I feel that the person leading it has been through the same kind of things themselves, or even in the moment, I genuinely have a better experience because I feel like they've already walked the path or are walking the path with us. So, I mean, the genuineness comes through.
Yeah, I make it a point to lead with vulnerability all the time. I think, we all go through our own ebbs and flows in life. And sometimes keeping that stuff to yourself can feel like something that you want to do because perhaps you're ashamed of your personal experiences. But once you begin to share them, you realize that you're not alone. And I think that that's really the key to creating a sense of love and unity, just within society in general, is leading with vulnerability. And then it's much easier to meet somebody at that level as opposed to them holding back.
I agree. I always link it back to either meeting new friends within groups or going on dates. It's if I feel that person is just kind of like perfect, I am instantly not interested in getting to know them. Like I just feel like there's a brick wall around all the things that really matter.
Yeah, if you're sensing that they have a brick wall up, then they probably do. And that's something that they're holding some discomfort around. And it's something that they're going to have to work through. But it's always kind of transparent when somebody's doing that and in their own time, right? But for me in particular, I like to share my experiences with others. And I've noticed that when I do that, it's received with a degree of warmth and compassion. And that's what I want to spread.
And it opens people up to feel safe that they want to share and reveal and be vulnerable. So,
Right.
and I mean, that's the first step to connecting.
Right. We all want to feel safety. We all
Yeah.
want to feel seen and heard by those around us. And I think sharing is one way to do that.
Mm-hmm. I want to read a couple parts of your website because I swear to God, you could have changed the photos of you with photos of me and it could have been my website.
Get out, really?
Oh my God. I was reading it and I'm like, I literally had to look at the photo. I was like, right, this is not my website. This is Amanda's website. But it felt just like so relatable. So I want to read out just like kind of the main parts of your website, of like your homepage and whatnot. Because I feel like if I felt like I was reading my own autobiography, I'm sure there's people listening that probably feel the same way. So, the front page of your website, for everyone listening, it states, what if everything you've ever wanted was not only within reach, but was waiting for you to claim it? And what if the key to the happiness and inner peace that you've been searching for wasn't quote unquote out there, but rather you already held all the power within you? Amanda, that's a scary thought, to think that everything I want or anything anyone else wants that's listening, it's within us. Like that's how easy it is. So, I mean, it's
scary?
I think it's scary to understand how powerful you are.
Yeah, I guess there's a discomfort in accepting that if I don't have what I want, then I'm responsible for that.
Yeah, right? I don't know. I hate that idea.
But on the flip side, it's extremely empowering.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you already hold all the tools within you, then all you have to do is a little bit of journaling around what's been holding you back. There's nobody and nothing that's holding you back except for you. And your power lies within you, understanding how you've been holding yourself back so that you no longer are doing that to yourself anymore. Yeah. So yes, it can feel scary, but I think if you shift your perspective and you look at it from a different way, it's extremely empowering.
I also love the part, this is where I really felt that it was relatable for me, was when you talk about kind of the traditional boxes that you check. So you say on your website, I never felt like I belonged anywhere. And I absolutely felt that way throughout high school and university and even earlier in my career. And you say on your website, I tried to ignore these questions that nobody seemed to have the answers to. And I did what I was told. I checked all the boxes. I went to school. I got an education. I started working. I met a wonderful person and got married. But you still felt like something is not right. So I would love for you to expand on that a bit.
Yeah, growing up, we're taught, if you follow this traditional path and you do all the things and you check all the boxes, you're going to be just fine, right? You're gonna be
that easy.
Yeah, you're gonna be happy. You're going to be healthy. You're going to have abundance of every kind, and you do all the things because you're a good girl and you follow all the rules and you check all the boxes, and then you realize one day you wake up and you're like, whoa, I'm not happy. I don't feel fulfilled. I don't even know who I am. I feel so disconnected from myself and the world around me. And I'm living a life that I don't even enjoy. And that's a really terrifying reality to wake up to. But I would argue again that it's very exciting because you've realized that up until now, you've been living a life that somebody else told you was meant for you, and you were listening to somebody else other than your own intuition. And I think that up until this point in society and in world history in general, we've been putting our power outside of ourselves, right? We're operating under the belief system that our happiness and our sense of fulfillment and our sense of joy and inner peace is found outside of us. And so we have to do all the things and we have to check all the boxes. And if we do that, then we'll have everything we need. And so we're searching for those things outside of ourselves. And that's why you wake up one day and you don't feel good despite doing quote unquote the right thing.
And for you, you didn't realize that the path that I went down wasn't right until, like you said, you had it all and you still woke up and still felt like almost you've achieved nothing, or I like the word that you used, you felt disconnected.
Yeah. I wouldn't say that I ever felt that I had it all,
Oh,
actually. Yeah.
from
I
an
would,
outside perspective, maybe?
from an outside perspective,
Mm,
but inside, it never felt right,
right.
ever. And I was disregarding how I was feeling because I was following the blueprint. And I think a lot of us do that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I try to empower people, especially women. Women are highly intuitive, to learn to trust their own intuition, even if it doesn't make sense.
Mm,
And even if it doesn't make sense to the people around you, if it feels good inside, if that's essentially what you're chasing anyway, right? When you
yeah.
follow the blueprint and you do all the things and you check all the boxes, what you are trying to do is fulfill a feeling: confidence, inner peace, joy, happiness. I mean, that's the goal, is to feel a certain thing within yourself and within your life, but you're just searching for it out there somewhere.
Mm,
So the goal then is, okay, if I'm not finding it out there, I have the power to create it within myself at any point in time. So I need to turn inwards and figure out how to do that.
mhm.
And that will mean disregarding everyone else's opinion and focusing on your own.
For you specifically, when you started looking within, I can speak for myself and I know all the answers are right there. I don't even have to give it much thought. But for me, it's I have to take the time to sit down and be willing to listen to what's in there because it's there. It just needs to be voiced. So, did you feel the same way?
Yeah, I think that's another common misconception in our society, is that the busier we are, the better,
No, it's the
right?
worst.
Well, that's a misconception, right? You have to be busy, you have to hustle, you have to have the drive, you have to push through the discomfort. And the more you do, the more you'll have, the better you'll feel.
And I mean,
Well,
we said before we record it, you're from Toronto and I live in Toronto. And I mean, this is the Canadian hub of hustle and it sucks your soul most times.
yeah, I think we're entering into a paradigm shift
Mm-hmm.
where we're starting to realize that it's actually not giving us all that we thought it would. And that the key, perhaps, to feeling more peace is to doing less, not doing more. So if doing more of the things is taking you further away from what you're searching for, then trusting that doing less is okay and it's safe to
Mm.
do that. And I think learning to find safety within doing the opposite that you've been taught does take time, but it starts with taking the time to check in with yourself regularly.
What was the first clues to you that you thought, I am not aligned at all?
Yeah, I feel like this is a good time to tell you my story and kind
Please.
of the evolution of how I got to this place.
Mm-hmm.
So, in my late teens and early 20s, I went through a really dark time in my life, and it was brought on from a belief system that I had within myself that I wasn't inherently worthy. I didn't feel like I was worthy of love, is what it came down to. And I was under the impression that I had to earn love, I had to earn validity, I had to earn a sense of worth from myself, but also from those around me.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I decided was that I had to earn it through accomplishing things. And I would decide that I would, create this goal that I had in my mind, and that when I could accomplish it, then I would finally feel worthy within myself. And this was all subconscious. I didn't
Yeah.
realize what was happening at the time. But I would throw myself into this goal that I had full force, and I would get right up to the door of what I wanted, and the door would get slammed in my face. And that would send me reeling, and I would take some time to heal from that. And then I would say, you know what? Okay, that wasn't the thing.
Mm-hmm.
This other thing is going to be the thing. So then I would go all in on that other goal, get right up to the door, and the door would slam in my face. And this was a pattern for a while, where everything that I thought would bring me that sense of worth, I couldn't get it. And so I decided that this validated my belief system that I wasn't inherently worthy. Look, I have proof I'm not worthy. And that's what sent me into like a very dark, deep spiral. And from there, I it was in a time of my life where I didn't feel like I had any control, right? Everything I thought I wanted was being taken from me. I didn't have any control. So I turned to food because I believed that that was something I could control. So I was withholding food and I could manipulate the size and shape of my body. That was something I could control.
Mm-hmm.
And then over time, I found interest in the fitness industry, and I started working as a personal trainer. And I really loved being able to help others become healthy and empowered. So rather than withholding food, I started exercising like crazy and eating more, but it was still a form of control, which I didn't realize at the time. And I would say in the last 3 years, I kind of came to a reckoning where I started to really take the time to reflect, which is something I never did before. And I went back to this cycle that I knew existed earlier in my life where what I wanted was never available to me. And I put the pieces together and I realized that my perspective was incorrect. It wasn't the pattern that validated my unworthiness. It was a pattern that was showing me that I was searching in the wrong place. That pattern was there as a mirror to reflect that actually this cycle of searching for your worth outside of you, it's not what you need to be doing. You need to look inwards. And so when I realized that, a light bulb went off, and I had been doing the same thing within my work where I was taking jobs where I was being mistreated, where I was being underpaid, where I was being overworked, because that's what I thought I was worthy of. Everything in my life was reflecting that back at me, and I didn't see it. And that's when everything started to shift for me. And I realized, okay, I have the power to change my situation here. If I don't love what I'm doing and I'm so unhappy within my work, I can change this. And that was something that sent me to my knees. Like, it wasn't an easy realization, and it took a lot of time to work through. And I did have to hire my own coach to help me with that. It's not something I could have done alone. I always advocate, having somebody help you work. It's hard to see the forest through the trees is what but yeah, I started taking the time to ask myself, what does bring me joy? Where and when am I happy? And how can I start to release this need to control my sense of self-worth rather than just inherently feeling it? And it was a process, and it brought me to where I am now.
So what was in that list? What did bring you joy?
So many things that I was not doing.
Okay.
Going for walks in the park.
Okay.
Taking the time to read. Slowing the F down. Like, my need for control is kind of channeled into work. The more I work, the more I can have this feeling of control, that it all comes down to feeling safe within my life, feeling safe within my work. If I can work harder, I can control how safe I feel, because I feel like I have a degree of control over the outcome. I don't, but it's an emotional thing for me. So learning to slow down, and in that time where I could slow down and reflect, that's where insight was able to drop in, where I wasn't allowing it to before. And I realized that a lot of the work I was doing with my clients is what I enjoyed doing it, but I wanted to do it through a different lens. And so that's kind of slowly how I transition. Does that answer your question?
Yes. What other big ones, like anything specific, like and I'm asking because I resonate so much. So it's like, when I ask you what brought you joy, or what brought you joy that you weren't doing, you're saying long walks, slowing down, reading. Anything else in terms of like career that like wasn't adding up, or even like location base?
All of that. So I'm currently living in a place where I don't inherently feel connected. So I am just getting started I'm about to go on a mini road trip this winter to start to see where do I connect better. It's been baby steps for me. I was doing a lot of nutrition work with my clients. I was working in fitness. I opened up my own gym 3 years ago, 6 months before a worldwide pandemic. Okay. Yep. I opened up the gym, and I didn't even enjoy personal training, but
so why do it?
because that's what I knew and that's what I felt was the right next step box. And so I was working as a trainer that I didn't even enjoy doing it anymore. I was doing nutrition coaching. I didn't even really enjoy doing it. But I was noticing through some of the work that I was doing with my clients, when we talked about this stuff, like getting to the heart of the issue, for a lot of them, they would come to me and we were supposed to be, working on weight loss and manipulating food, but we didn't spend a lot of time talking about food. We talked about their feelings. We talked about the stress they were working through in their life. And it was lighting me up in a way that I hadn't experienced before. And so it took a lot of reflection to realize I can continue to do this work, but not through the fitness label. I can shed that label. It's okay. I can be safe doing that. And I shut my gym down and everyone thought I was crazy because I just opened it and I was doing this incredible thing, running my own business. But to me, it made sense.
And it also just didn't feel right. Didn't feel aligned, as we said.
Exactly.
So many avenues I can go right now. Are you familiar with astrocartography?
No.
We'll talk about it afterwards because I want to focus more on you, but essentially it's like astrology, but it's on like you basically type your birth chart and it gives you a map and it basically gives you all the places in the world that like maybe you'll feel the most aligned. Maybe you'll find love and success there more. There's some places where it's like not to avoid, but like you'll probably go through a lot of like transformations and like harder points in your life. For me, for Toronto, I don't have any lines there. So that's probably why I feel like nothing's crazy bad, but nothing crazy feels aligned as well. Like it's fine and it makes sense, but I'm trying to plan my travels in the future around some of those lines just to see if I feel different. And for me, some of my best lines are actually around where I'm from. And it's interesting. Every time I go home to visit, I feel very grounded and I feel very aligned, but like it doesn't make sense from a career standpoint to be there. But like I definitely notice a difference in myself in terms of like my emotions and like even like outer appearance and like the way I hold myself. So it's just something to look into. After, I'll send you the link.
Please do.
So especially if you're going to plan a road trip, maybe plan around these lines.
Please do.
Is there any places that you think you would feel more aligned in?
Yeah, I need to be by the ocean.
Yeah, girl, I feel that.
I just do. I feel like I come alive when I'm by the water. Mm-hmm. And I've never been able to live by the water before, but it's something, it's like, it's calling to me. Yeah. I have to follow it.
I feel the same. And because my career is still in Toronto and I definitely want to continue down the Toronto chapter. What I did in the meantime is I moved down by the lake.
Right.
And I noticed a difference. The first day I moved into this apartment, even like my friends were like, your stress levels and cortisol levels are gone. And so it just goes to show people, yeah, if you don't feel aligned where you are, maybe a cross-country move or going to another country is maybe not in reach for you at this moment, but how are ways that you can change little things, you know?
Yeah, I will say we're talking about a lot of big shifts. I'm someone that's been able to do a lot of like really seemingly big shifts in a very short amount of time recently. But I don't want to scare people into feeling like they have to tear it all down and build it all up again. Like that's not necessarily what I'm saying. You can do something as simple as start a joy journal. Mm-hmm. Spend some time writing down all the things that bring you joy. And then you'll start to notice the vibrational dissonance between the things that do and the things that don't. Mm-hmm. And perhaps you're spending a lot of time in the things that don't, and just starting to incorporate one or two of those things that do into your daily or weekly life can make a very big difference. And just start there.
Just start there. And I think when people think about making big changes, it's not usually the big change. Sometimes what you're switching around is a little change, but the impact becomes really big. And then it's a domino effect of how the rest of other parts of your life will be impacted and change. And maybe those shifts are bigger, but like traditionally the shifts might not be as big. Like it might not be quitting your job and moving countries and getting divorced and all this stuff.
Yeah. What I've noticed, which is not like immediately apparent, is that it's actually not the change itself that's the scary part for people. It's what they're making it mean about them.
Okay, give me an example for like that you
Right?
went through.
Like for me, I started my own gym like 6 months before a pandemic, and then I shut it down shortly after that. I could make that mean that I'm a failure, that I
Or I give
failed,
up.
that I gave up, that I gave up my dream, that I didn't have what it took, that I'm taking my ability to do that for granted, or that I'm letting my clients down by doing that. And maybe those things could be true if I looked at it from that perspective. But I am the happiest that I have ever been in this moment right now. And I wouldn't be here if it weren't for all of my failures, and if it weren't for all of my perceived limitations. And so were those really failures? Were those really limitations? I don't think so.
You bring up a great point. It's you get to decide how to craft the narrative. So yeah, you can walk around saying, I failed, I gave up, and people are going to jump onto that narrative. It's very easy. Or you can say, no, that just wasn't it. I'm glad I tried it. I've learned a lot and I'm going to be able to take this into the next thing. And that's going to be even more successful because I went through this or because I built this first. Yeah. It's all about the narrative. I want to pick a bit more about the self-worth and seeking validation outside of yourself. Yeah, I've done that personally through achievements, through having the courage to move different places. I've even seen it in the people I choose to date. Even like, yeah, they're not really aligned with what I want, but on paper, they look pretty good. Or given what they do for work and given where they're from, my family will approve of this. So yeah. But we still end up pretty unhappy and misaligned, unaligned.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the best way to help people start to realize what is driving their decision making. Like, how do you know that it's coming from a place of love versus a place of fear is, I guess, the question. And if I want to start to make decisions from a place of love and a place of like already being full versus a place of not feeling like I'm worthy or feeling like there's a lack in some way, I think it comes down to how you feel in your physical body when you're making the decision. And I think that's a thing a lot of us get trapped up in our heads about things and all the thoughts just circulating, but we don't check in with how the decision is making us feel physically. And when you're
too damn busy, we don't even sit with how we feel.
Honestly, yes. But it's true. It's so true. And so if a decision is making you feel this like contraction feeling, or if there's like, if your heart is pounding, if there's this like weird gut feeling, if your body's feeling like an ick feeling, that's a sign that it might not be aligned for you. Whereas if it's just this like weird inherent knowing, or if it makes you feel kind of a sense of calm inside of you rather than panic, then it's probably coming from a place of a deeper knowing. And it takes time to build that connection and sense of trust with your own intuition in that way, because we're so used to disregarding it. And so understanding the dissonance between the two and learning to trust your own intuition, I think it just takes time, but starting to get into the habit of checking in that way will be very helpful in the long run.
And I know for me, sometimes it just takes a little time, like sit with the decision or the idea for a bit first before saying yes or no, or, you know?
Yeah. I think it's different for everybody. Like for me, it's usually in my past me, that's what I always did, is I didn't like to make like on the second like gut decisions, and I would take some time to think about it, and I would talk myself into something or talk myself out of something. But I'm learning that my first gut reaction is actually always right. I just wasn't trusting it.
Yep.
And so now I'll ask myself, like, does this feel good? Yes or no?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm usually right. So I think for everybody, it's a little different, and learning, what feels good for you. But it does take time to sit and reflect. Like, you have to slow down and take a minute to allow yourself to learn.
And it might be both. Like for me, I can give examples for myself. So there's a bunch of my girlfriends that are going out this upcoming Friday night, and I got invited, and just for multiple different reasons, it was an instant hell no for me. Like I have no interest in going for a multitude of reasons. And that was my initial gut reaction. And I said no right away. Or I think I said, I don't know yet. But even with me saying, I don't know, I know for me, that means no. And yeah, a couple of my friends are asking like, why? And I'm like, don't worry about it. I'd just rather be alone for this particular situation. And I knew it was that initial gut reaction. It wasn't a hell yes. And I live my life a lot with hell yes versus hell no. And that was a hell no for me. And then, but on the flip side, I find little things like if I go on a date, I kind of like to sit with how I feel for a couple days before I make a decision on, is that person the right person to go on a second date with? I don't like to make those instant decisions. So it's like for anyone listening, you could go either way. Some parts of your life you might need to be like, let me just sit and process my feelings or process my emotions or whatever. Other things instantly, you're like, nope, not for me, or yes, that's definitely for me. I feel like with everyone, the best way to notice that is when people are asking you to hang out or do social plans. You usually know right away if you want to do it or not.
Yeah. No, I love that. Starting to take some time and experiment.
Yeah.
Like, how do I operate in this situation versus this situation? Or, starting to do like tiny things to test, okay, how can I start to build that trust muscle with my own intuition, and start to learn to tell the difference with things that don't feel so without as much weight. Like, should I take this route home or this route home?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like small things. But yeah, I think it's situation dependent and person dependent. Absolutely.
100%. I want to ask you about when people are making big decisions for themselves that are maybe off the traditional path, and everyone around them wouldn't normally do that themselves, but cannot understand why the person in question wants to do that. But you as the person know deep down, that's exactly what I need. How does that person, I guess, set a boundary or say like, hey, that's not the life that you want, and that's okay, but this is what I'm being called to do? Because we can let a lot of voices get in our head and talk us out of doing the things our soul truly wants.
Yeah, I think just that, speaking up. And I can use myself as an example here. Mm-hmm. When I decided to start my own business, it's because I was at a crossroads where I had been going for 10 years from job to job, where I was just so mistreated. Mm-hmm. And the last place of work was like a particularly bad experience. And so I had to sit and think, like, I can continue to search for a place where I'm treated decently, and I wasn't asking for a lot.
Mm-hmm. We never are.
My bar was quite low at the time, and I can continue doing that. It hasn't worked for me up until now, but perhaps it will one day. Or I can do the scary thing and open up my own business. And I decided to take a leap and open up my own business. And every single person in my life, except for my husband, told me it was a bad idea. Every single one. But what they were doing was they were projecting their own fears and their own insecurities onto me. Mm-hmm. And I had to just sit there and recognize that for what it was and do the thing that felt right for me anyway. And that took courage. One, I didn't need to give them a reason why I was doing what I was doing. If I wanted to, I did. Otherwise, I just thanked them for their unsolicited opinion.
Thank you, but I don't care.
Yeah, like I think that we all kind of do that. We have our own set of experiences and we're just trying to be helpful, right? And so if I want to give someone else my opinion, it's because I'm trying to protect them from perhaps the pain that I felt at some point in my life. But
Or the
but
fear.
right, exactly. The fear, the pain that the fear brought on, the fear that the pain brought on. And so being able to recognize that in the people in your life and like holding space for them to feel what they need to feel without taking that on yourself is really is an important skill to learn. And again, taking the time to check in with me, like what feels good for me, what do I want, which decision feels good to me even though it doesn't make sense to anyone else, and then just allowing everyone else to deal with that. And if they truly love you, they will support you. And if they don't, then it's up to you to decide if you want that energy in your life.
Mm.
And I think it takes time to develop that sense of trust within yourself. But if you're finding that you're experiencing that, like, that's okay. You're not alone. I dealt with that myself as well. I think we all do. And you know best what is good for you. And having compassion with yourself as you work through that is really important.
Mm. I find for me as well, surrounding yourself with some more like-minded people as well. So if you're surrounded by people who do traditional jobs and can never understand that you want to go do your own business, start surrounding yourself with people who have started their own businesses, because then it makes everything seem so much more possible and easy and achievable than if you were keep hanging out and surrounding yourself and listening to the opinions of the people who aren't living the life that you want.
Yeah, I didn't know anyone that was an entrepreneur. There you go. Right? I was doing this scary thing that nobody else had ever done before. And that's why they were telling me it was a mistake, is because they were too scared to do it themselves. And so they were just trying to protect me from potential pain and discomfort that they had protected themselves from by not doing the scary thing.
Yeah. And it can seep into you. And then you get down a road of people pleasing and just living your life by the way everyone else wants you to. And then one day you wake up and the cycle is around again and we wonder why we're miserable.
Yeah. And that's okay too.
Yeah.
At some point you'll recognize, the different decision that you need to make. And that different decision will lead to a different outcome. Mm-hmm. And it just requires time and learning experiences. That's all.
I want to ask you, you've worked with and you use a lot of really cool modalities to help the people you're helping and for yourself as well. And as I mentioned, some of them include obviously just like normal psychology, Reiki energy work, somatic breath work, and psychic readings. For anyone listening who has no idea what we're talking about, what does this look like in practice?
Yeah. So in the last 3 years, since I decided to step away from the fitness and nutrition label and kind of explore a new avenue for myself, all of these other modalities kind of came into my awareness. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that that's surprising at all, that as soon as I stepped away from one thing, it opened up the door to something else. But I essentially just realized, honestly, where my strengths were. And intuition is where they are. And it's something that I had ignored for 35 years. And as soon as I opened up my ability to trust in my own intuition, it started just appearing for me. And so if you were to put what I do in a box, you could call it life coaching, right? Yeah. Traditional life coaching is a way to help people work through their own limiting beliefs or their own fears and their own patterns to create a shift within themselves so that they can begin to move forward in a new way and to take action in a more aligned way. But that focus is on this lifetime. I'm about to get very woo-woo on you.
Please, no, there's a lot of woo-woo-ness on this podcast. Okay. So don't worry.
If this doesn't resonate woo-woo with you, if you're listening and it doesn't resonate, just disregard. So through the work that I do, I focus on the soul, not the life. if that makes sense.
Yep.
So
I understand. So don't worry about me.
okay.
I'm
So
pretty spiritual, so don't worry.
okay. And so sometimes the soul needs something that the human mind might not be aware of. And it might resonate in a different way if it's being told from more of a soul perspective or a soul level. So when I can bring forward guidance on a more zoomed out approach, I just find that it hits differently for people. And it empowers them in a way that they couldn't access before when they realize, wow, like I don't have just this one chance to get it right. This is just one opportunity and many lifetimes of opportunities. And it opens up this door for more play where there might not have been before. The stakes don't feel so high. It's like, oh, I'm just here to explore and to play and to create things. And so that's kind of something that I discovered through the work I'm doing. And the guides can say things that I can't say. They say things in a much more direct way where people aren't as open to receiving if it's coming from my opinion alone. And they also have a way of saying things in a way that resonates with the soul that it's being received by. So it's just a very beautiful way of showing them, one, they're not alone. They have their own team and their guides to support them. They're never alone, even if they can't see the spirits around them, they're always there. And being able to be a vessel for that information and that knowing has been very powerful. And then when it comes to energy healing in general, everything is energy, everything. Our thoughts and our emotions are also energy, and they carry with them an energetic vibration. And when we don't allow ourselves to feel and release emotions, they get trapped in the body. And so I found that doing energy work in combination with some deeper emotional release work has just accelerated the transformational process for the client, and they move through blocks much quicker. So sometimes I will have an intuitive nudge, but then I'm never making the executive decision for the client. I think the difference with the work I'm doing perhaps is that there is no guesswork here. The soul guides the journey. And sometimes we're not ready to hear things until we are. And that's okay too.
Yeah. Don't I know it? There's things that I know that I'm not ready to hear. And I've seen it in my past too. Last couple of questions for you before you go. What's a couple things that people can do today, very tactical, that if they're feeling very unaligned with every part of their life, what can they do today to at least start discovering like what their intuition is telling them?
Yeah, that's been the question that I've been getting asked a lot lately. Perhaps it's in the ether.
Yeah.
And we're all starting to come to some of these realizations that the life we're living is not fully in alignment with who we really are. And I think, one, taking the time to recognize that is the first step. And that can be a very scary and overwhelming feeling. But I come back to, yes, but it's also the beginning of something great. Like you can continue to live in an unhappy way, or you can live a life that you feel fueled by and excited by. So that's actually a very exciting prospect. And then the next step is writing down a list of all the things that you don't feel good about in your life and just getting really clear on what they are. And then all of the things, again, the joy journal, all of the things that you feel really good about. And can you cross one thing off the list that you don't feel good about and add one thing that you do?
Switch them out.
It can be so small. It can be so small. It doesn't have to be anything big. It can be, for me, honestly, my entire life is different now, but I was doing like heavy powerlifting workouts before, and I decided I didn't want to do that anymore. So now I just, I'll jump on the Peloton a couple times.
And it feels better.
Oh, it feels amazing. I feel free.
Yeah.
I feel free. And it's a very subtle change, but I feel different because I made that change. And giving yourself time to explore how it feels different. And if there's fear around doing that, then allowing yourself to feel that is okay. The fear is not going to go away. It's part of our human experience. It's just an emotion that we have. And so if you're feeling fear around something, feel it.
Yeah.
It's okay. I will say that going through this process alone is really hard to do. I could not do it alone. I had to hire a coach for myself to help me. So look for somebody that you resonate with so that you can have a support system while you start to explore this new side of you. And I feel like that might be very helpful in going through this process.
And for anyone listening right now who would like to connect with you and maybe start that process, where do they connect with you? And what does that process look like as you start working with them?
Sure. So my website, it's just my name, AmandaLaurenBlau.com. My last name is B as in Bob, L as in Larry, A-U. You can also find me on Instagram at Amanda Lauren Blau, on Facebook, Amanda Blau. If someone might be interested in reaching out to me for coaching, we would sit down and we would have a consultation. It would be an hour for free where we would sit and talk. And you would tell me all about you and what you're looking to change, if anything, and how you're feeling in your life. And the two of us would just explore, why you haven't made that shift yet and what that shift would look like and what working together would look like, how that would look and what that would consist of. And then from there, you can decide if it's a good fit for you.
Okay.
But at least you walk away with some coaching.
Yeah. Amanda, last but not least, before you go, any final words of advice or encouragement for anyone listening that is maybe going through some of the things that you have gone through in the past?
Yeah. I think this is a time where a lot of us are going through it. I think that there's been like an actual vibrational shift on this planet that's taking place. And a lot of us are waking up to the fact that we've been living our lives for somebody else and not for ourselves. And I want you, one, to know that you're not alone. And two, to know that you don't have to rush the process. Take it slow, be patient with yourself, show yourself compassion. And there is so much joy on the other side of that. Like the discomfort around all of these changes that you feel like you have to make. There's so much joy on the other side of starting to shift those things for you. Just going to take time, but like that's all we have is time. So give yourself that time. It doesn't have to be rushed. And you might be surprised at the magic that you might find on the other side of it.
Amanda, I can speak for myself knowing that there's a few things I need to change. I've changed a lot in the past couple of years, and I can confidently say my life has changed a lot and the shifts and the impacts are huge, but there's still, I'm going to write my own list of which ones need to be switched out. But I know for sure, even in my immediate circle, and it's probably just the general age group I'm in, that late 20s, early 30s, there are so many people in my immediate circle that are waking up right now and saying, I am living my life for someone else. And none of this I chose and none of this I care about. And I hope if they're listening and whoever else is listening that feels that way, they start making some changes today. So thank you so much for being that inspiration today.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a blast, honestly.
Good. I'm glad. Did you know that I'm not only a podcast host, but in my full-time career, I am a Toronto-based real estate agent. In 2021, I closed 100 deals. Yes, you heard that correctly, 100. So if you or someone you know is a busy professional looking to get into the Toronto real estate market and looking to work with a realtor who values your time, make sure to reach out to me and let's get connected. And in the meantime, we'll see you here back next week.